Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 10th webinar for local and regional governments towards COP25, hosted by ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability, in its capacity as the focal point of local government and municipal authorities constituency. This 1-hour webinar will be in two structures. Those who are familiar with our webinars, which has been taking on since the beginning of the year on a monthly basis, we are having it in two slots. One is, as of today, like you have been here, is a morning session, which is an opportunity for especially Eastern Hemisphere and European partners to join. And then we are having another one at 4 p.m., which is for the Western Hemisphere. Again, Europe is advantages, of course, because of the time zones. And every session we are trying to enrich our dialogues with colleagues, special guests. I'm happy to inform you that today we will be joined with Nick Godfrey, the Director of Coalition for Urban Transitions. And in the afternoon, we will have Jordan Harris from the incoming COP25 presidency subnational team. My name is Yunus Arikan. I will be acting as the moderator, but also panelist of this webinar. For technical guidance, all the participants at the session are muted at the beginning in order to ensure that we can smoothly run the presentations. Meanwhile, while you're listening to the presentation, you can type your questions to the question box, which could give us the chance to respond later on. Or when we have the Q&A session, we could open the floor for you. You can intervene verbally, or you can also still write your questions. And again, for an information, this webinar series are recorded, and after the conclusion of the afternoon session, by the latest tomorrow, we are uploading both the recordings of the webinar, but also as well as the PowerPoints that was shown, and we're sharing publicly, mainly to the members and partners in the LGMA constituency, but also the UNFCCC Friends of Multi-Level Action. So this is also becoming a public domain, the discussion we are having. With this, I'd like to start our webinar's agenda. We usually start our webinars by having a brief overview of what we are starting to do since the beginning of the year, some basic recalling institutional information and strategic updates, strategic information about our vision. We tried to follow up from the last webinar, which was this time on the 18th of September. Just before the UN Climate Action Summit, and we are trying to go through it. Then, as we said, highlighted, we will have a deep dive to the flagship report of the Coalition for Urban Transition, Climate Emergence, Urban Opportunity, which will be presented by Nick Godfrey. By the time he takes over, we will share his screen so that you will see his slides. And because it's a very unique agenda, I suggest after his presentation, we have a special Q&A session, especially for any clarification of the contents of his presentation. And afterwards, we will go on the COP25 agenda and the latest discussions on the way towards COP26 in 2020. With this, let's recall the climate conferences are annual decision-making meetings of the national governments, but especially on the way towards Paris and after Paris, there is more and more effort to engage the climate action agenda because it's also as equally important to the negotiations, especially now with the Paris Agreement implementation, which is universal. That is much more important how we deliver the Paris Agreement goals. So every year, the country who hosts the COP, which is end of the year, starting from this moment on, they are announced as the presidency, which means throughout the year they're responsible for the political shepherding of all the outcomes. And the next country who will host the next COP is announced as the incoming presidency, which is the one that are prepared to have their responsibilities. So it's a transition. And it's usually the presidencies are assigned by the national governments at the highest level possible in terms of ministerial level. And in parallel to the negotiations leadership, which is the presidents, the climate action champions are also announced by the presidencies, so that there is a number of teams who are supporting this process. And every year in between, these teams and the negotiators come together in Bonn in June, which is a technical session called subsidiary body meetings. It is mainly a preparation of the decision making, but also an opportunity to review the outcomes and to see the gaps and to see how things could be accelerated. And this is traditional always in Bonn, in the seat of the UN Climate Change Secretariat. As of today, presidency is in the hands of the Polish government. They are the COP24 president. Michał Kurtyka is the state secretary and minister of energy, and special envoy for climate action is Mr. Thomas Khrushchev. The incoming COP25 presidency is hosted by Chile. Mrs. Carolina Schmidt, who is the Minister of Environment, is the president or designated president, and she has appointed Mr. Gonzalo Munoz as the high-level champion. What we have started this year, 2019, was a legacy from the Talanoas of 2018. This was an opportunity to bring Paris Agreement back to the capitals, back to the cities all around the world. It was a unique moment to discuss whether the current NDCs are fit for Paris Agreement, and in particular, the ones that we have been dealing with, which is the cities and regions Talanoa dialogue, was to bridge sustainable urban development with climate action and engaging all levels of government. This was a momentous experience. We had 60 events in 40 countries, and the COP in Katowice decided that this experience should be used to improve NDCs, hopefully presented in 2020. As we said, this is a cyclic process. We're talking about the 25th Conference of Parties. We have, as a local governments and municipal authorities constituency, we are one of the 9 or 10 stakeholder groups who are engaged in the process, especially together with business and climate community and environmental groups. Local governments are the ones who have been participating in this process since '95. Our modality of engagement is that we showcase our information or our action through reporting our data through the platform of CDP, ICLEI, and other resources, but all now this feeding into the NASCA. We are hosting, depending on the agenda, either side events or summits of local and regional governments. In addition to that, we participate year-round to the consultations, which are hosted in specific themes and specific venues. And the LGMA has authority to nominate representatives when we can intervene with the discussions. We are also participating in the Marrakesh Partnership since 2015 in Paris Agreement as a follow-up. And finally, we are also, even though we don't have a voting right, we are engaged in the decision-making process, especially through our interventions on specific agenda items, but as well as using the opportunity through the Friends of Cities, which was established in 2012, which is the national governments who are supporting the idea of collaborating with local and regional governments, which is since June 2019 has evolved into UNFCCC Friends of Multi-Level Action. In particular, for the agenda of this year, starting from the beginning, we said that we have 3 priorities. First of all, we want to deliver the decision of COP24 to make use of the Talanoa experience in improving the NDCs. We would particularly be interested in the Standing Committee on Finance, which hosted a specific forum on sustainable cities and climate finance, and we had been always asking that local governments, regardless of the negotiations, should deliver more ambitious actions, and they should deliver their climate commitments. And in particular, this year was unique because of the UN Climate Action Summit. The climate neutrality was a theme defined in the UN climate agreement of Paris Agreement, but climate emergency has becoming a hot topic, especially with the Fridays for Future as well. The traditional priorities every year, COP presidencies have defined their own topics. This time it is really diverse, and it also is impacting, luckily in a positive sense, the way we're engaged in the agenda of COP, which we'll discuss later on. But we are happy that after the discussions in June in Bonn, the presidency has also highlighted cities as a specific theme. Throughout the year, we have been running our engagement, and we are now in the last, let's say, 100 meters or so. But particularly, we were very active in our own events. A number of networks have stood there hosted their annual congresses. We had specific regional summits. We had followed UNFCCC workshops and processes, and we were engaged in the UN process like Environment Assembly, Habitat Assembly, the desertification COP, as well as the biodiversity processes and UN Climate Action Summit as well. And 2019 was particularly unique because of the global climate strikes and the European Parliament elections, which was a unique moment. This is a catch up from what has happened since 21st of September, the last webinar. Obviously, it was overlapping with Urban October, an initiative driven by UN Habitat, which is celebrating the importance of the local and regional governments, cities and regions in broad sense. And we can definitely say that this time it was particularly very impressive with the engagement of local and regional governments. First of all, we had the 2019 UN Climate Action Summit in New York. I will not go into details. We have shared a lot. In the final version of this webinar, you would see links to each of those, let's say, events or processes. I would recommend you have a look at the op-ed released by the UN Secretary General after the summit. We, as ICLEI, has released a blog that compiles the key takeaways with the number of initiatives and efforts. We encourage you to check with NASCA, which has turned out to be the Global Climate Action Platform, was really a unique now leveraging of all the visibility, both in connection to the initiatives of the stakeholders, but the added value is this new version of NASCA is that you can now relate your initiatives with the NDCs of the national governments. In fact, starting with the 2014, where Carbon Climate Registry was one of the two reporting data providers with the CDP, we had been following the evolution of NASCA, and we believe this is really an excellent level of maturity that NASCA has reached now. In October, we had the pre-COP Costa Rica. There were special agendas with cities and regions, also especially on and the priority of the Costa Rica. But there was also discussions on transport and mobility. Costa Rica was very active in the transport-related initiatives. During this Costa Rica, a group of stakeholders, where local governments and narrow networks were very actively involved, sent an open letter to the presidency of COP26 under the groundswell initiative, which was asking and continuity of the climate action beyond 2020. The report of the Climate Finance and Sustainable Cities Forum was released, which was recognized as one of the most impressive outcomes of the standing committee ever hosted on the climate finance. We congratulate all our partners involved in there. C40 Mayors Summit was in Copenhagen. It was impressive in terms of the announcements, the initiatives. It was a nice follow-up from New York, actually, and the UN Secretary General was personal there as well. In October, we also had Climate Change Africa Summit, which released the Accra Declaration that is presented as the pre-COP of the non-state actors, which on an annual basis. That is also a unique added value from the stakeholders and leadership of local governments as well. In Austria and Burgenland, there was a symposium on UNFCCC Action for Climate Empowerment. The importance is that this declaration is trying to elevate the importance of education, training, and public participation, awareness, and with a specific vision on cities and regions engagement. And Burgenland was, in fact, a region of Austria which hosted the event, which is demonstrating once again the importance of engagement of local and regional governments. Similarly, in Seoul, the renewable energy community met in the KIREC, which was for the first time co-hosted by a local government, and this time it was Seoul Metropolitan Government, which was also hosted back-to-back to Seoul Mayor's Forum on Climate Change, which also announced a number of regional initiatives, but also a statement which encourages all the nations to come to COP in Santiago to commit that they will bring in 2020 elevated NDCs with multi-level engagement. Climate Heritage Network is a new actor in the climate space. This is bringing mainly the culture, arts, and music community, and local governments are also actively involved. And we believe this will bring a very good momentum to the global climate action agenda. And just last week, Marrakesh Partnership also has hosted their preparatory meetings, which is on the agenda of the COP25 and the deliverables like the yearbook, the pathways, and all mobilization with the COP agendas. With this, I would now happy to hand over the floor to my colleague Nick Godfrey, which we are enjoying to support their work over the course of the years. And we particularly requested Nick to join us because in the climate summit, the Coalition of Urban Transitions really shaped the agenda with their flagship report, which was a collaborative effort of a broad diversity of partners. And we would like to listen more details on what the messages of the report and what can we take towards COP25 and on COP26 onwards. Nick, thanks a lot, and the floor is yours.
Eunice, it's a real delight to be invited to this presentation. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and good morning, everyone. As Eunice mentioned, I will use the next 10 minutes or so to give an overview of our new report, Climate Emergency Urban Opportunity. My name is Nick Godfrey. I'm the director of the Coalition for Urban Transitions, which means that I look after the initiative on a day-to-day basis. Firstly, before I go into the report, just a very brief note around the Coalition for Urban Transitions and who we are. So we're a major global initiative that was set up in 2016 to help national governments secure economic prosperity and tackle the climate crisis by transforming cities. So we focus exclusively on working with national governments, and hence we are an initiative which is complementary to the traditional core business of the city networks that work with many of you as local and regional governments. And so we work with national governments to equip them with the evidence and policy options to deliver more compact, connected, clean urban development. We have a major global program that puts together best practice evidence to help support decision-making, and we have a major country program operating in China, Ghana, Mexico, and Tanzania, working with national governments and assembling coalitions of stakeholders to help co-produce and design national urban development strategies that are compatible with the Paris Agreement. So in terms of the report itself, Climate Emergency Urban Opportunity, how national governments can secure economic prosperity and avert the climate catastrophe by transforming cities. As Eunice mentioned, we launched the report on the 22nd of September in partnership with the UN Secretary General and Deputy Secretary General at the Secretary General's Climate Summit. And the report has been co-produced with 50 organizations. It stands on 3 years of research, 9 original analyses, and 10 case studies of national action and national governments working in partnership with city level governments to drive the type of change we want to see, and concludes with 6 priorities for national action. This just gives you a sense of we have 14 senior ambassadors that we've been lucky enough to have their support in disseminating, communicating results of the work. There may be a number of familiar faces here. I don't have time to go through them now, but we've been very lucky to have a number of senior ambassadors supporting our work and communicating the report. And as I mentioned before, 50 institutions have been involved in co-producing and helping us develop the draft reports, and ICLEI and many of the other city networks have been right at the heart of this effort. And a huge thank you to Eunice and to Gino for their leadership and support. So in terms of the report content itself, well, the report lays out, we feel, a compelling case for ambitious low carbon action in cities. This slide just really makes the point that you will not be lost on any of you, that the battle for the planet will be won or lost in cities. We know that cities are around 80% of global GDP. They account for around 3/4 of energy-related carbon emissions. And by mid-century, over 2/3 of the world's population will live in cities. So the question is, how do we combine supporting economic prosperity in cities at the same time as tackling the climate crisis? This is the defining challenge of our generation. And the report makes the point that we believe the solution is zero carbon cities, cities which are more compact, connected and clean, compact, shorthand for more efficient land use; connected, shorthand for world-class public transit and active transport systems; and clean, shorthand for ensuring that cities are powered by clean energy and make efficient use of that energy. The report lays out the pathway to zero carbon cities by mid-century. The report shows, based on new and original analysis, that it is possible, based on currently available technologies and practices, for cities worldwide to take action that would lead to a 90% reduction in emissions from cities by mid-century, which would be equivalent to 16.6 gigatons, or roughly 60% of the effort needed for the IEA's 2-degree pathway. We also know that this type of action in all of the world's cities would generate enormous economic returns. It's an enormously attractive pathway. The report estimates that new investment of the tune of around 2% of global GDP per year, and I underscore the point that this is an investment of around 2% of global GDP per year would unlock enormous economic dividends. The benefits based on energy savings and material cost savings alone would outweigh the costs to the tune of $24 trillion by mid-century. And these investments would also generate an enormous number of new jobs, 87 million jobs by 2030, 45 million by mid-century. Not only does the report show that compact, connected, clean urban development, compact, connected, clean cities are cheaper to run and cheaper to build, it also shows that the type of cities that we want and we need are also more productive and more innovative, capable of sustaining long-term economic development. The benefits of proximity and density in cities clearly enable specialization, knowledge spillovers, and economies of scale. And the report, I think, shows in a compelling way that countries that prioritize zero carbon cities will ultimately win out in the global race for mobile talent and investment. And we know this, the cities in the world, such as Vienna or Amsterdam, those that we see are very attractive in terms of efficient land use and world-class public transport systems, are the ones that are most attractive for mobile talent and capital. And we think that this trend will continue. The report highlights that to deliver on the promise of zero carbon cities by mid-century will require action across all tiers of government. So we know that nearly 10,000 local governments have committed to setting emission reduction targets in line with the Paris Agreement, from Copenhagen to Medellin. Huge numbers of local governments have stepped up and demonstrated leadership in line with this agenda. However, the report shows, I think for the first time, that local governments cannot achieve and seize the urban opportunity alone. National governments in particular have a unique and crucial role to play. New analysis for the report shows around 1/3 of the global urban mitigation potential I mentioned before sits in the hands of city and local level government. Around another third has to be primarily driven by national or state level governments. And then the remaining third requires collaboration across all tiers of government. This is a very powerful and important message that all tiers of government have a responsibility to act and to do so together. Now, the role of national and state level government, the report finds especially important for smaller cities, which are home to over half the urban population and account for over half of urban abatement potential. Yet the report demonstrates a pretty worrying trend. It shows that fewer than 2 in 5 countries have an explicit national strategy for cities, despite the important role that national governments need to play. It shows that only 39% of national urban policies and 14% of the nationally determined contributions speak specifically to driving down emissions in urban areas, and only 7 countries have an NDC and an NUP that speak to climate mitigation in urban areas. So what do we do about this? Well, the report offers a 6-part action plan for national governments, 6 priorities for achieving inclusive zero carbon resilient cities. The first overarching recommendation is that all countries should place cities at the heart of their national strategies to deliver shared prosperity while reaching net zero by mid-century. It suggests and recommends that all countries align their national policies behind compact, connected, clean cities, from national buildings and transport policy to decarbonizing the grid. And third, it suggests that all countries have to place a much greater emphasis on raising and steering finance for sustainable urban infrastructure. Fourth, national governments have a unique and crucial role to play in enabling and empowering local governments to go faster and further. Many of you will know that very well. Fifth, building a multilateral system that fosters inclusive zero carbon cities is enormously important. National governments are the shareholders in the multilateral institutions. We often forget that and have a key role to play on the boards of those institutions. And finally, proactively planning for a just transition is enormously important. There will be winners and losers, and there will be trade-offs. And it's important that national governments play an enormously important role in ensuring a just and smooth transition to a low carbon urban future. Within these 6 priorities, the report offers a wide array of more specific policy options and recommendations for policymakers. We don't have time to go through this now, but you can take a look at the action plan that's available online and look at the detail that's there. And finally, I really just wanted to conclude with making a point around how can you, as city governments, use the report. I know that many of you on this call are primarily from local and city governments, and some of you may be from regional governments. Well, how can you use the report? I think the first point I would make is that you can use the report to make the case to your national governments to prioritize compact, connected and clean cities. Second, we feel you should encourage and support your national governments to deliver on the 6 priorities for action. I think third, developing meaningful partnerships with national ministries is going to be really important, particularly ministries of finance. Fourth, please continue to raise your ambition and support innovation at the city level. And finally, please use this report to raise awareness about the need of all actors to seize the urban opportunity. In conclusion, the report shows that an inclusive zero carbon urban transition would raise living standards for all and secure national economic prosperity for decades to come. City governments are stepping up to the challenge. We now need national governments to do the same, and this is particularly important in the run up to COP26, which Eunice alluded to before. I will leave it there. You can find out more about the report at urbantransitions.global. We have a specific briefing that we've designed for mayors and city governments that you can take a look at if that's of interest. And the website includes a shorter version of this slide pack, which you can use for your own presentations. And it also includes a number of other briefing materials, such as a video. It includes an executive summary. It includes a key message document and includes the 6-part action plan. So please check it out and download that. It's all publicly available for your use. I'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Eunice.
Thanks a lot, Nick, and congratulations for your whole team. It was really an exciting effort. And of course, like many of the Climate Action Summit deliverables, this aims to not to be the end of the journey, but just on the contrary, is how to make use these messages to be incorporated into the direct implementation. Therefore, I think the recognition of and dissemination, further dissemination of these messages at COP25, and especially making sure that by the time we go to Glasgow, hopefully a number of and as much as higher number of national governments hear this call and bring to Glasgow their new NDCs, which is much more ambitious and probably because they have incorporated local energy government more actively. Okay, so as we said, because of this unique content of this presentation, I suggest we can give a couple of more minutes for our colleagues in the audience of this webinar, either to raise hands so that they can speak or type questions. It could be a question, it could be a comment, it could be clarification, but we could also still keep this opportunity in the next couple of minutes when we conclude the session. I just wanted to see whether there's any appetite from any participant of this audience now. At this stage, I don't see any hands raised or any questions typed, but let's go on, and maybe we can have a wrap up at the end once again, and in that sense, maybe we can also give an opportunity to Nick to make a summary of any points he wants to raise other than the presentation he made. So let's continue. Once again, in the COP25 agenda, we said that NDC's commitment to improve NDCs, building on the outcomes of climate summit and building on the Taldano is a key expectation. There will be a huge discussion on Paris Agreement Article 6, which is market and non-market mechanism, and that also relates to local governments, because sustainable urban development, sustainable urban and territorial development, how we can make use that a kind of a non-market mechanism to be a question that we could clarify as much as possible. We said that during the year there was an important meeting of the finance community. The outcome report is pretty ambitious, and we have to make this operationalized. We have to see how parties would reflect into the climate summit outcomes. It's not just that they wish, but if in fact the Katowice Climate Conference has already announced that they are welcoming this summit. Therefore, they should have a decision or a response to this. That's important because let me give for example, a differentiation. In 2014, when the climate summit was held in 2014, the outcome of this meeting was not even referred into the outcome of the COP19 at that time, COP20 at that time. So it's important that both Katowice and Santiago decisions refer to the Climate Action Summit. And one key agenda that is very relevant to us as a community of action, local and regional governments, the global climate action is particularly addressed in the Paris Agreement only until 2020. How this action agenda will continue after 2020 is important, and we hope from Santiago we hear some commitments, some signals to make sure that the decision from Glasgow refers that global climate action agenda is advanced, is even much more robust, it is even more visible and supporting to the whole Paris Agreement process. And as we said, Paris Agreement Article 12 and Article 6 is also relevant for climate empowerment. That is what we will be hoping to see some progress as well, and as well as the engagement of local energy governments. The logos that you see below are the ones that the network so far have shared with us their particularly agendas that is relevant for our constituency, and this is not an exhaustive list at the moment. This is the first start, and then we would like to make it populated as much as possible. In terms of the agenda, we are talking about a 2 weeks of period. We will have daily meetings, interventions, especially at the opening and closing sessions. We are hoping that in the next couple of days, many of the pavilions and UNFCCC side event agenda will be clarified, so we will map this as well. We will have climate action studio interviews. Every year we are reserved for 5 slots, and we want to make sure this is filled up with promising and as much as possible diverse speakers, in both in gender, also potential typology of the representative jurisdiction, but also regionally, globally balanced. On the 5th, we are expecting to have a transport day. Our colleagues from SLOCAT are leading this. There will be definitely a number of opportunities for urban transport in particular. On the 6th, there will be the first transport ministerial. Between 5th and 7th, there will be Marrakesh Partnership thematic events. Several events are relevant to the human settlements and also cross-cutting issues like ocean resilience, energy, and transport. On the 7th, Paris Committee on Capacity Building will have the second capacity building days, and this will be another opportunity because last year there was a local government and cities day. This will be repeated in the second the version this year on the 7th of December. We hope to have a forum or a meeting of the Friends of Multi-Level Action, in particular seeing what the progress we have achieved this year. We had ICA conference, we had NDCP partnership advancing, and we have ICLEI at the UN Climate Action Summit. So we would like to see a gathering of the UNFCCC negotiators, how much they're involved and how they are interacting with all these initiatives so that we can feed into the UNFCCC process as appropriate. The date is not defined yet. On the 9th will be the peak day for us, local and regional governments. It is either announced as a local and regional government day or multi-level action day. It's the moment where the global council of mayors will reserve the one pavilion of the European Union pavilions dedicated for GCOM partners. We're also expecting the COP presidency to announce the outcome of their roadmap for the Latin American and Caribbean regions for a climate roadmap for them. It will be both in the green zone and the blue zone. On the 10th of December, we look forward to collaborating with the presidency to come up with our roadmap towards Glasgow. We don't know how would be the outcome of the overall COP25, but we really believe there will be a value if we can come up with an agenda. I will go through it later on as well. So that we, just like we have used in the local government climate roadmap in 2007 and 2012, or Paris Agreement process, or the Talanoa dialogues, that we give a clear signal that we are now once again leveraging our engagement. On the 9th and 10th, there will be Marrakesh Roundtable, Partnership Roundtables, and Global Action Award ceremonies. On 10 and 11th of December, there will be Environment, Climate, and Finance Energy Ministerials. All these events, of course, will be a collective effort. ICLEI is also bringing its own additional networks and processes that we are leading or partnering with, hoping that they will be complementing with the agenda of the COP25. You can notice that by diversity of the themes are really making the climate COPs a huge agenda. So we want to make sure all our networks and initiatives are feeding into the process as appropriate, and we will update this as in future. Just to let you know, starting from tomorrow onwards, we will also release a shared file which will be tracking all the agendas of the LGMA partners and the delegations they're expecting to bring, so that we can track this information as appropriate, and we will make use the synthesis information at the cities and regions website, which was the venue or landing page for COP21, 22, 23, and 24. And the last slide is our works towards COP26. This is a tentative milestone event that will take us the journey from Santiago to Glasgow. This is a list according to calendar. It will be starting with World Urban Forum in Abu Dhabi in February. This is not a negotiation session as such, but it is the largest gathering of urban community. And in fact, the more we are aware that UN Habitat strategy is aligning with climate agenda, the more we are making closer the urban community and climate community closer to each other. I think the World Urban Forum will play a key role. Let's recall the last one in Kuala Lumpur was the moment where we kicked off the cities and regions Talanoa dialogues, and UN Habitat Assembly was also seeing the COP23 presidency as well joining in Nairobi. So it's a lot of opportunities there. Earth Day this year will celebrate the 50th anniversary. 22nd of April 1970 was the remarkable moment for pushing the citizens into the policies of environment action. So there will be massive events, and we will participate in these efforts. There will be numerous agendas going on. In June, we will be meeting in Bonn for the UN conference, but it's also the moment where the traditional ICLEI's Residencies Congress is evolving into a new structure with Urban Era for Life. We will share more updates on that. On the same days of the UN conference in Bonn, there will be the celebration of the 5th of June, World Environment Day. This year, it will also be overlapping with the Beethoven Pastoral, inviting communities to connect arts, music, and culture to climate action and nature. In June will be a number of other events. It will be the peak moment of the 2020. There will be a Built Environment Conference in Stockholm. This is particularly important for the the business community and scientific community to be much more aware of SDGs and climate action. IUCN will have its own Congress. This is particularly important because this year is the way towards the nature post 2020 vision, and IUCN has been playing a key role, and there will be special emphasis to cities and regions. In September in New York City, there will be a nature summit. This is a decision of the biodiversity negotiation, so that it is not a climate action summit of the Secretary General, but it will be a UN nature summit. But we hope it will be as equally important and impressive as the climate action summit. So let's stay tuned on that. That will be followed up, but at least at the European level, European Sustainable Cities and Towns Conference in Mannheim in October. In October, we will be having the biodiversity COP15 in Kunming in China. We will have pre-COP in Milan, and there will be a number of exciting agendas. There's some informal consultations going on, and we will end up with COP26 in Glasgow in November. Obviously, as you have heard, the Brexit, we will see how this will influence the preparations. We hope whatever outcome comes up, the stakeholders in the UK, the city of Glasgow, the Scottish government, and the UK government will make sure COP26 is prepared in the best way. Let's remember, during these processes, the leadership of national governments is interesting. This year, there will be presidencies. It will be a combination. G7 will be led by the United States. We're all aware the current federal administration's position towards Paris Agreement, which will see how this will shape the year-out preparations towards COP. G20 will be led by Saudi Arabia. We are being aware that over the past 3 years or 2 years, there was a spatial engagement community, which is Urban 20, and we will see how this Urban 20 will be contributing to the G20 process. Our colleagues C40 and UCLG will be updating us on that front. And there will be EU presidency in the second half of the year, which is the moment where most of the decisions like Nature Summit, Biodiversity Summit, and the Climate Summit will be held. The European Union will be under the presidency of Germany, and Germany, being aware that has been very active in many of the climate agendas, also in multilateral and collaborative action. We hope there will be very positive impacts that's coming from their presidency. With this, I'd like to conclude today's presentations. At least we still have 5 minutes, 5 or so, and I'm now happy to open the floor for questions, remarks, contributions, both for Nick's presentation on the Coalition for Urban Transition flagship report, Climate Emergency Urban Opportunity, but all the agendas of this year and next year for COP. So now I see Eva raising hand, Eva Banyos from CMR, and Sarah Kupka with a question. Let's read the first question from Sarah, and then we can give the floor for Eva, and then if Sarah can also intervene verbally if needed, so that we can give this opportunity. Let me read the question from Sarah first. Thanks for the presentation. Do you have any details of the Latin American Summit on the 9th of December? This is that we would like to listen from Jordan Harris in the afternoon session. Sarah, if you can join us, I think that is much more appropriate if we hear from them, because it's an initiative of the presidency. Therefore, I would recommend we keep this question reserved for the time being. What we know at the moment is that they have already started consultations with the regional actors. They had been participating in pre-COP as well as the Regional Climate Week, and they have already have hosted several events in Colombia and others with GCOM and other partners. So let's hear from them. Thanks for your understanding, and Sarah, and we can continue this discussion there as well. And Eva is also raising the point of what is the difference with the 7th of December and 9th of December agendas. That, I think, is a good question. 7th of December is only for capacity building under the Paris Committee. It is certain procedures that it was open for calls for applications. Several networks have participated. We, together with UN Habitat and ICLEI, served in the steering committee in the selection process, but it doesn't cover all the agendas. Whereas on the 9th of December, we are expecting both presidency event, the GCOM event. We are expecting many of the UNFCCC side events to be convening on that day, so that it is much more diverse, much more rich in terms of agendas and events and interactions. That is the main difference. But as I said, on the next couple of days, when we share with you this open file, Google file, you would see there is a culmination of events between 7th, 9, and 10. So we are prepared that the peak days for LGMA will be 7, 9, 10 in its entirety, and possibly even the 8th. And because we're in touch with the regional government of Santiago, whether they can welcome the audience, LGMA community, at a special event on Sunday evening. So we are keeping this reservations for the next couple of days. So 7, 8, 9, 10 will be the peak moments for our engagement overall. And Eva and Sarah, if you would like to add additional points, you can feel free to unmute yourself and interact if needed. So this is also possible at this point. I think that at least the responses to the questions were satisfactory, I hope. And now, knowing that we are getting close to our agenda for today, I want to invite Nick for a concluding remark, especially maybe if you want to share any of your ideas for COP25 and COP26. We know we will have internal consultations in the next couple of days, so that we will make sure the report is prominently visible in a number of events and partnerships. But any additional remarks or concluding remarks from your side, Nick, you're more than welcome to take the floor.
Thank you, Yunus. I think the only thing I would say is that I just wanted to wholeheartedly agree with your point that it's enormously important now that we encourage a range of countries who are ultimately responsible for developing the NDCs in partnership with other tiers of government. It's enormously important that they prioritize getting cities right as a key part of enhancing their NDCs. And I think it's enormously important that we encourage the new COP presidency to look at this issue. We certainly will be. Now, I think one of the key questions is, what does placing cities at the heart of enhanced NDCs really mean in practice, in addition to a traditional sector-based approach? And that is something that we're starting to do some real thinking on. And so we very much encourage and welcome any suggestions in that regard. But just wanted to wholeheartedly endorse the key messages and points that you made, Yunus, and wanted to thank the entire group for allowing me to tell you about our report. And please don't hesitate to reach out to me or the team if you want any further information.
Excellent, Nick. And I think this report and its key message will definitely enrich our messages towards COP25 and COP26. And I believe there will be numerous opportunities to interact during these days and throughout the year in the agenda that I have shared as the first draft of calendar. But I'm sure there will be numerous opportunities that we make use of it. And I know, for example, you were in C40 Summit. 2 weeks later, we will have the UCLG World Congress. You will be going there. UCLG was also one of the core partners of this process, so that there will be more interactions to digest the input, the content of your report and key messages, and then come up with a strategy on the way forward. So we look forward to your efforts. Once again, thank you for your leadership and your whole team. Fantastic efforts, and we as ICLEI were delighted to be part of this journey, and let's continue onwards. So with this, I see one clarification from Eva, whether these 7 and 9 are local days. There will be, these are the days that we will be having priority actions, but I'm expecting there will be several other days dedicated by the UNFCCC on these days as well. So it will not be just the cities there or local and regional governments, but we are saying that the LGMA peaking moments are 7, 8, 9, and 10. I hope this was helpful, Eva, and happy to follow up later on as well. And with this, let me once again thank all the participants and Nick and his team as well, and my colleagues in World Secretariat for facilitating this session. I'd like to thank you all. As we said, tomorrow you will receive the links to the webinar records, hopefully also the open file for updating our information. And once again, good afternoon. Have a nice day. Good evening to all of you wherever you're joining on. And once again, let's connect. The next webinar will be on the 20th of November. That will be the moment we'll particularly focus on day by day or session by session the COP25 agenda. In between, as we said, there will be an important moment in the UCLG World Congress in Durban. There will also be, I think, an important event on the 21st of November at the Committee of the Regions in Brussels, which will also be connected to a number of events like Transformative Actions Award of ICLEI Europe and European Committee of the Regions, but also GCOM is also hosting a number of events. And we also would like to, we are in touch with the Scottish and Glasgow colleagues, whether there may be a moment for an informal or the first official preparatory meeting for COP26. So I just flagged this now, but I didn't want to put anything in writing before confirming with our colleagues. But definitely over the course of the day, we will share with you through LGMA mailing lists. So stay tuned and feel free to share your updates as well. Thank you very much.